I've been planning and managing events for over 15, 16 years now. And one of the things I don't mess about with is written communication, and not just WhatsApp messages. Nope. At the very minimum, any discussion I have will be confirmed in an email. I have so many, like plenty of horror stories of not doing this. And more than once I was saved from scammers because I said, "Can you put that in writing, please?" And I seriously, I just don't work with any venue, whether an entertainer, vendor, promoter, etc. I just don't. That doesn't agree to written, formal or informal communication. It's always a big red flag for me. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the risks of relying solely on verbal agreements when planning events, and the benefits of putting things in writing and what to include in the agreement, and whether that's just a simple email or a legal contract. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Elevate Your World podcast. This podcast is for anyone who wants to take their business to the next level. Each episode tackles a topic relevant to entrepreneurs and those looking to start a business. I share tips and tricks on how you can grow your business, find success, and elevate your life. I am your host, Jules. When it comes to the business of planning events, relying only on phone calls or face-to-face verbal agreements can be a risky business. While it may seem easier to just have a quick chat and assume everyone is on the same page, there are a number of drawbacks that can come up from this. One of the biggest risks is the potential for misunderstandings. Without a written record of what has been agreed upon, it's easy for details to get lost in translation. And this is a true story. A vendor for one of my events a few years back said that they need 50% of the payment up front. Now I'll say it again, 50%. But I swore, I'm telling you the truth, I swore I heard 15 instead. And yeah, this miscommunication led to problems, as the vendor was expecting a different amount of money. They almost cancelled on me, and then obviously I had to come up with the extra money, which I hadn't budgeted for at that particular time of planning the event. But in the end, we got it solved in the end. Another risk is the potential for disagreements or disputes. If there's no written agreement to refer to, it can be difficult to resolve any conflicts that arise. I told you I have stories, and I was managing a performance for one of my artists, and I agreed with the promoter over the phone a new change in the performance schedule, and the change was for 10 p.m. performance time. So we arrived at the venue, in good time. We were there by 9 p.m. The promoter was angry, he was livid, insisting that the performance time was 9 p.m. So as you can imagine, it was a lot of drama. So see, without any written record of this agreement, it was difficult to resolve the dispute. However, if either of us had just sent an email reconfirming the start time, I would have had a clear record of what had been agreed upon, and it would have helped avoid the dispute altogether. In addition to this, verbal agreements are more likely to lead to forgotten details, as you're probably dealing with 1,000,001 things to do with the event. When you're discussing something over the phone or in person, it's easy to overlook those details and assume that everyone is singing from the same hymn sheet when they're not. Without something to refer to, it's easy for these oversights to slip through the cracks and cause problems later on. Now, one of the most significant benefits of putting things in writing is that it can reduce the risk of disputes like the one I just described. When everyone involved in the event has a clear understanding of what's expected of them, it's less likely that there will be any confusion or arguments. A written agreement basically provides a clear record of what has been said, and this can be incredibly helpful in situations where there has been a dispute or miscommunication. Having this agreement can also help you ensure that all of the important details are covered. And when you're discussing something verbally, it's so easy to forget small details. I've even had to refer to an email to make sure I said what I said. By putting everything in writing, you can ensure that all of the key information is documented and accounted for. And this can help to reduce the risk of oversights, mistakes, etc., and ensure that the event runs smoothly from start to finish. By having something in place, everyone knows what's what from the get-go, which can help to ensure a smoother planning process and a more successful event overall. Now that we've talked about the risks and the benefits, let's go into what should be included in such an agreement when planning an event. And there are several different types that can be used for events, including simple WhatsApp communication, contracts, legal documents and emails. And each has its own advantages and disadvantages, depending on your specific situation. Contracts and legal documents provide a high degree of legal protection, while emails are more informal and can be easier to create and send. But ultimately, the choice of which type of written agreement to use will depend on factors such as the nature of the event, the level of the formality required, and the legal requirements in your area or your country even. No matter what type of agreement you choose, there are some key things you should include in it. Firstly, it's important to be specific and detailed about the terms of the agreement. This means including information such as the venue, date, time, location of the event, fees, payment terms, cancellation policies. It's also important to include any relevant terms and conditions such as requirements for venues, vendors, entertainment, restrictions on certain activities, and any liability clauses. It can also be helpful to include a timeline of important dates and milestones leading up to the event, and this can help ensure that everyone involved is unified and that everything is progressing according to plan. Other things to consider including in the agreement might be a list of equipment or materials, transport, or refreshments that will be provided, expectations for staff, and any other important details that need to be covered. When creating a written agreement, it's important to be as clear and comprehensive as possible. Avoid using jargon, these technical terms that might be confusing to someone who's not familiar. So use simple, straightforward language and be sure to include all the necessary details. And finally, I want to make it clear, just in case anyone's getting me wrong, and say that verbal agreements are still very necessary and obviously unavoidable. However, as I said, relying solely on that can lead to misunderstandings, disputes, and other problems. So to ensure that all parties are in sync, here are 3 tips that you can use. Number 1, summarize the verbal communication in an email or other written communication. This can help ensure that everyone has clear understanding of what has been agreed upon and can also serve as a reference point in future. 2, be specific and detailed when creating the agreement. Include all of the important details, date, time, location, fees, payments, and other relevant info. And 3, communicate clearly and regularly with all parties involved in the event. Keep everyone up to date on any changes or updates and be sure to address any questions or concerns as soon as possible. So, whether you're planning a small conference or a large-scale concert, I encourage you to take the time to create a written agreement that outlines all of the important details. By doing so, you can help to avoid problems down the road and ensure that your event is a huge success. Thanks for listening to this episode on events. As usual, if you do listen to the other episodes, you can get more resources on event planning, event management on our website. That's elevatestudiouk.com/resources. There are loads of articles, ebooks, courses, and things to help you with your event. Thank you for listening to the Elevate Your World podcast. Until the next time, keep elevating.